All right, we ready? Testing, testing, one, two, three. Where do I begin? It has taken me quite some time to actually start this podcast. God gave me the vision for it a couple of months ago, and then there were some hiccups and some things that happened that kind of altered my start date. But how many of you know that usually when there is opposition, it's because it is something great that is about to be birthed? So here I am. Welcome to my podcast. Where do I begin? Where do I begin? I found it to be impactful to share parts of my story with people. And I want to make sure that I am sharing from a place of authenticity because I think it's important for us to be authentic in our story and in our testimony. And I just know that so many people's stories have helped me along the way. And I've heard so much feedback from people that have told me that my story has helped them along the way. And so as I've begun my healing journey and really dug deeper into my relationship with the Lord and my journey as a believer and a kingdom citizen, not just a Christian, but a believer, and understanding the authority that I have in the kingdom, understanding God's design for us as kingdom citizens, kingdom sons and daughters. It really reflects on how important our testimony is because you just never know who your story might impact. And you never know who is experiencing the same thing that you've experienced that has a blueprint on how to get through it. And so, first and foremost, I just want to honor all of the women in my life that have been instrumental in my healing and my growth, in me becoming the woman that I am. And I just want to honor those that have been bold enough to tell their story in whatever capacity that looks like, because I know that there is so much power, there is so much um, boldness and courage in sharing your story. And so I just want to honor those that have gone before me and have shared their stories and made it safe for me to share mine. Um, I also want to make a disclaimer that any story that I share is not from a place of a victim mentality. Any story that I'm sharing is not from a place of trauma or offense. I have grown so much over the last 5 years, and I have dealt with my traumas. I have dealt with the things that have been hidden under the closet and under the bed. I have made amends with those that I've needed to make amends with, and I've forgiven those that I've needed to forgive. And I have asked for forgiveness from those that I know that I needed to ask forgiveness from. And so when I share my story, I'm not sharing from a place of pain, but I'm sharing from a place of purpose and a place of triumph. So I don't want anyone to hear anything that I share and feel like, oh, she still need to work through this, or, she's still dealing with that, because I'm not. The Lord is good. He is kind. He is just, and He is a deliverer to those who want to be delivered. And there are so many things that I have been freed from, even as of lately, that no longer hold me and no longer keep me bound. And so I can boldly come to you and share my truth. I can boldly come to you and share the things that I've experienced as a child, as a young woman, as a single mother, as a married woman, as a divorced woman, as a woman that has mother issues and father issues and all of those things, because thanks be to God, I've been in a place of overcoming, and I've overcome these things to where they no longer keep me bound. And so I think that that's important to share, because a lot of times we share our story, and when we're sharing our story, it's because we're still broken or we're still wounded from that place. But it's important to understand and highlight that you can still share your truth and also be in a place of healing from that. You can also be in a place of overcoming, but your truth is still your truth. And so don't let anyone diminish your story because they still haven't dealt with the wounds of it, or they haven't taken accountability for their part in your story, or they are afraid of looking like the villain in your story, especially when you're speaking your truth from a place of victory. And so, one of the things that I have really learned over the years is the importance of forgiveness, and how forgiveness is tied to freedom. I've shared before on some Bible studies and some other videos that I posted on YouTube that, my story began a very messy story. Um, my mom was pregnant with me, very late in, not very late in life, but later in life. And she was told that she wouldn't be able to have any more children. And my mom and my dad were having an affair. My dad is a married man, and he is still married to his wife to this day. Um, and so back in the 80s, it wasn't as common to have baby mamas or children on the other side of town and all of those things as it is now in 2024. But I was birthed in a lifestyle of pain, um, of guilt, and of shame, just because of the way that I was conceived and the way that I was brought into this world. I was also conceived in love. I don't ever want to get it twisted. My mom and my dad, they had a very strong love for each other, um, and they had a history. And so the fact that I was born and conceived in this world, for me, when I reflect back and through the things that I've had to heal from with just both parental wounds that I've had, I realized that I was born for a purpose, that I was birthed for a purpose, and that it doesn't matter what my birth story is or was, that I was supposed to be here. And in my time of healing and forgiveness of both of my parents, the Lord has spoken to me over the years and just shown me that you've never been without. My father was not an active part of my life. My father had a whole family on the other side of town, and I met my siblings when I was 12 years old. I met my sister in the mall. Um, and honestly, I probably think that if I had never run across my sister, I may have never met them, because it was never a priority for my father to meet my siblings. And I understand because he had a whole wife and a whole nother life. But for me as a little girl, I felt a lot of shame. I felt like I was a mistake. I felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. I felt very out of place. I remember, even into my 20s and 30s, feeling like I was a black sheep of the family and like I just didn't belong. Um, and, I just remember how big of an impact that had on my life. I do have siblings. My mom has two other children from a prior relationship and marriage that I'm very close to, but they're much older than me. And so I always just kind of felt like I just didn't have a place where I belonged. And I just felt like for a lot of the years in my life, I felt like I had a scarlet letter on me. I remember when I read that book for school that it resonated with me very strongly because I felt like that's me. Even though I wasn't the one that, participated in the act, I was a result of the act. And I remember just feeling that shame from a very young age. And it carried with me up into my adult years, and it really made it difficult for me to be able to release that guilt and that shame and that just that pain of feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. And it was only in my work of doing a lot of trauma healing, a lot of deep rooted healing work, but also in my relationship with God and understanding that God will use anything to get his glory in the earth. God will use two very imperfect people, two very imperfect situations, and then he will bring them together to birth something that is purposeful. Um, and it wasn't until I really, really began to sit with the Lord and really share with him my heart and pour out how I felt to him that I realized and I was able to receive from him that you've never been without a father. Your physical father may not have done the things that he was supposed to do as a father for you. Your mother may not have been able to handle you emotionally because of her own traumas and her own pains. But you were never without parents because you're mine. And that spoke to me. That was the healing that I need. Like, that was a balm to my soul to hear that from the Lord in prayer one day, when that was within the last year. And now I'm 40. And my prayer is that me sharing these stories helps you to have this revelation long before you enter into your 40s. I would love for young girls and even young men to understand that they are here on purpose. No matter what your birth story is, no matter what your parents did, no matter what you had to endure, no matter what you had to go through, God is very intentional and he uses every single thing. He will use a rock, he will use a donkey, he will use anything to get his glory on the earth. He will use any vehicle that he needs to for us to be able to walk in the calling that he has for us. And it may not always make sense, it may not always feel good, but it is always for a purpose. And understanding the call that I have on my life, the call of ministry, the call to help women heal, to call to help people birth their purpose and their breakthrough, the call to be a spiritual midwife, the call to be just an encourager. I walk in the gift of encouragement, to be a prayer warrior, to be purposeful in the kingdom for this season, for a time such as this. I understand that every single thing that I had to go through, even from the way that I was conceived, even, thank you, Lord, even the way that I grew up, all of it was purposeful, and God uses everything. And if it had not been for my birth story, if it had not been for the things that I witnessed and the things that I experienced and the things that I felt along the way, then I wouldn't be able to sit here today and be able to tell you from a healed place, from a place of wholeness, from a place of experience and full courage and conviction that he uses everything. Every single part of your story is purposeful. Every single part about the way that you were brought into this earth is purposeful. And so many years of just feeling like I was a mistake and feeling like I was not supposed to be here and feeling, resentful of my parents for having an affair and having me, and for resentful of my dad's kids for having a family, a full family with a mother and a father in the home, and resentful of my other brother and sister for having, the same last name, and all of these things, and having the fact that they were able to grow up together, but I was just by myself growing up because I was like the baby that was an oops baby. They thought I was a tumor. My mom was told she couldn't have any more children. She dealt with fibroids, had to have an emergency hysterectomy right after I was born. I just never felt like I belonged, and it took me all the way up to 40 years old to know that I not only belong, that I was placed here for a purpose. And it wasn't just for my family or for my mom or my dad or any of that. It was because God has a plan for my life, and God has a purpose for me to fulfill, and he has an assignment. And the only way that I'm going to be able to reach young women that look like you, and young men that look like you, and people that have been born out of adultery, people that have been born out of sin, people that met their siblings in the mall, people that grew up feeling like they didn't have a place to belong. Only because I've experienced those things firsthand can I speak to you and tell you from a place of victory that it's purposeful, that he's intentional, that he's always, always, always working things together for our good. And so I don't resent my story anymore. I don't resent the way that I was brought into this earth. I don't resent any of that anymore because God has told me that it doesn't matter who your parents were. I had a purpose for you. I specifically called you. I specifically chose you. I knew you. And I knew what you would accomplish. And I knew that you would overcome every single thing that was sent to break you. And I knew it because I placed all of this in you. I placed all the inner workings of my spirit in you. I placed all of the quirkiness, of the uniqueness, of all the things that made you not fit in. You were never supposed to fit in because I birthed you. I created you to stand out. And so looking back over my life, I can understand now why so many things didn't make sense and so many things didn't fit. And it was because it was never supposed to fit. It was because God created me for a very specific purpose, and He created me to be a mouthpiece and to be a vessel and to be able to have this platform in this day, in a day when the world is so lost, with so many people are broken, so many people are hurting, so many people are literally fighting just to be alive. I realize now that I was never supposed to fit in. I was never supposed to blend in with my family. I was never supposed to feel like I belonged. I was always supposed to feel out of place because I was placed where I was, because I wasn't supposed to fit in with that place. I was placed there because I was supposed to experience the things that I experienced so that I can tell people like you that you will overcome. And that puts a whole spin to the story. It really makes you look at life differently, and it makes you look at the Lord as with a heart of gladness and joy, to say, man, you loved me enough to allow me to go through all those things just because you knew that I would overcome. You were so confident in your grace in my life, in the favor that you had over me, in all the seasons and all the things that were supposed to take me out, all the times the enemy tried to take me out of here, that your hand has always been over my life. And it's because you have something great for me to do. I have a purpose. I have a reason to be here. I have a reason to live. And it makes you just look at God and just smile and say, man, you really, really rock with me, Lord. Like, you love me. Sometimes I've realized, because I found myself not long ago saying, why does it always have to be so hard for me, God? Why do I have to go through so many things? Why do I have to go through storm after storm and experience after experience? And I just found myself crying out, like, why do I have to go through? Why does it always have to be the hard route? And I remember saying, this was just a few weeks ago, and I was like, God, sometimes it's like you have more faith in me than I have in you. And as soon as the words left my mouth, I immediately got convicted and I began to sob, because I realized that sometimes He has more faith in us than we have in Him. And it made my heart sad. And I had to repent, because I can't think of one time that He's ever let me down. And I can't think of one time that He's ever not replaced anything that He took from me with something better. I can't think of one time where He didn't show up. I can't think of one time where He didn't show out. I can't think of one time where He didn't heal me, deliver me, favor me, bless me, answer a prayer. Man. So I say all that to say that my birth story may not have been ideal. It may not have been the silver spoon or the golden platter. It may not have been the happily ever after with the white picket fence. That I might have been born into shame, but I was birthed for a purpose. And I guarantee, if you look deep in your heart, in your spirit, and at your life and at your story, and think back to the times that God has always kept you, then you'll realize that you were birthed for purpose too. All right, y'all. That's it. Episode 1 down. Lord, we did it. Obedience is greater than sacrifice, y'all. I guess we'll see you for episode number 2. Peace.